Hello, this is Yvonne Teoh Bource from Connect to Soul with your soul wisdom for the week of the 27th of August 2018. So, the weeks are speeding by. Last night I had a call from my eldest son and he was talking about Christmas, and that always says, wow, we are heading very fast to the end of yet another year. However, all that we have is now, this moment, this very, very moment. And so the topic that I am going to spend some time with today and in weeks to come is the subject of spirituality. I know that I talk a lot about soul and I talk a lot about energy, and I really felt that, I was guided to take it right back and to examine spirituality. You know, what is it? And why has it become flavor of the month? So I would like to just talk about it in general and let's see what happens. So what is spirituality? For me, when I first had the call, as I call it, the wake-up call, that there was more to life than what I was experiencing, I went on this intensive journey of seeking answers to many, many questions. Today, I guess where this path has led me is the fact that my curiosity, although very much alive, has changed its intent. So my curiosity today is to learn more and more about the metaphysics, the quantum physics of creation, of this field of consciousness, as where in the early days my seeking was all about really what was the meaning of life, and what was that hunger within me, or that emptiness within me that wanted to be recognized, that wanted expression. So what is spirituality? Well, for me it has been the road to becoming a conscious, aware being. And I thought, well, I'll talk about that today a little bit more. In the beginning, the person that I used to be was somebody who always wanted to know, and then somebody who thought that they knew a lot. And how is that different 30 some years later? Well, the difference is in the knowing. So with all the seeking that I've done and all the learning that I've done over these 30 something years, about the meaning of life, about spirituality, what it means, and why has everyone sort of jumping on the bandwagon and wanting to go down this path, I was going to say, but it's actually up this path, is because of humanity as a whole and the evolutionary process of humanity as I see it. And we are in the process of developing our next expression of this species. So that just means that we have to move into a different direction to where we are sitting at the present time. The paradigm that we have been living in and by is no longer functioning for us, and we see all the time, all around us, their systems are breaking down, they're no longer doing what we want them to do, and so it is time for us to grow, to wake up as a humanity. Now, there are many, many people on this planet today that have particularly since 1987, have had the big wake-up call. You know, spirituality is not a new thing. It is a very old thing. There are many, many books, wonderful books written in the early 1900s of beautiful spiritual teachers that were attempting to wake up humanity. Then, of course, there were the beautiful spiritual teachers like Buddha and, Jesus and Muhammad and all of those, the wonderful people over the years there have been some amazing teachers that have pointed the way, so to speak. Well, that is what Jeshua ben Joseph always called it. I'm showing you the way. So this period in time where now there are more and more people waking up, and it's that wake-up call. I know I can share with you my personal experience of my wake-up call. It was all about suddenly coming to an understanding that everything that I believed in, everything that I was running my life by, everything that I had an opinion about, and gosh, I had lots of opinions, was suddenly became null and void. It was like nothing that I had established the foundation of my beingness on felt true anymore. I was suddenly in a void, in quicksand. There was nothing that I could hang on to, that I could say, well, this is how it is. I just found that nothing was how I thought it was. And so it was a painful experience for me, because I had to let go of everything that had been my guiding force, and I had to accept that I knew nothing. And yet today, when I look at the knowingness of things, there are many things that I can come up with. I still think that the more I learn, the less I know. But on the other end of the scale, I have an intense, strong knowingness which comes deep from within about who I am and about this field of consciousness that fuels life itself. And then on the other scale, what I think I know about that, tomorrow I'm hoping that I might, if there is a tomorrow, which of course we'll come to because there isn't, that in every moment that I am still here, I'm opening myself up to gain greater awareness and greater knowledge and greater knowingness and greater connection to that field of consciousness. So spirituality itself is just a road that we travel, a path that we're on to expand our understanding of life itself, to understand our who we are, the immense, magnificent and magnetic majesty of life, not just of the human species, but of everything that we are surrounded with, the amazing understanding of the creative process. All of these things are part of spirituality. So it's a pretty big subject, and I have called it part one because apparently we're going to be talking about it in some depth in weeks to come. And as you know, I completely work in a guided fashion, so I will just open myself up and allow that to flow. So let's talk about the wake-up call. So when we are conditioned, which we are still, to believe that we are physical and that the only reality is the physical, that whatever we can see, whatever we can hear, whatever we can touch, whatever we can taste, whatever we can feel, the five senses, whatever the five senses bring into our awareness is reality, and that's all there is. Well, I think most of us on this path, and if you're listening to me, you have gone beyond that. You realize that actually the unseen is much broader than the seen and the heard and the smell. Oh, I forgot the smell bit. There's just so much more. There's so much more. And we are constantly, for those of us who have, stepped onto the path of becoming consciously aware, we are continuously driven to find out what is next. What more can I learn about me, about the world around me, about life itself? It's a drive that comes from within. And my belief about that at the present moment is that that drive is part of the necessity of humanity to evolve into its next phase of existence. So it's a bit like being on a bridge, right? We are on the bridge, and one day we will get to the other side of the bridge, and humanity will look quite different and be quite different. And if you feel that you might question that, then we can just look back into history and see how the human species has developed from, Neanderthal man to whatever I haven't got them all in my mind, but to the Homo sapien that we are supposed to be. And so I'm a true believer in that we are on the precipice of the new evolutionary expression of the human species, which some people call the Homo universalis, which means that I guess we are looking towards a much more consciously aware being that has stepped out of survival mode, that has stepped out of the belief that all that is important is the material world. And of course, as we do that, there is a huge push from the other side, where the material world doesn't want to be ignored. It has power. It wants our attention. So to go beyond that takes focus. It takes intent, and that's why we do what we do. So let's talk about the wake-up call. So there are many different ways that your soul, or that this evolutionary process of the field of consciousness gets you to wake up. and I often say, and this is not my saying, because I learned it many years in the early days when I first started my seeking. I did a lot of work with a wonderful entity called Lazarus, who I believe is about to leave us, and who has been walking beside many people for over, probably 40 years. And the wisdom that came from wherever Lazarus it was a spiritual entity that had incredible wisdom. But one of Lazarus' sayings was, listen to the whispers so you don't have to hear the shouts. And that has become a mantra for me, because we are constantly given signs, hints, intuitive nudges that we have to go there instead of there, and so many times we override it because we have so many excuses. But I can't do that right now because that person needs me, and there's an emergency here, and look, I will lose my job, and then I can't pay the bills. Oh boy, that's such a big one, isn't it? And so we put up with a whole lot in life because we're too scared to follow the inner guidance, which says, hey, resign, move over there. Because the minute that you do, of course, everything falls into place. But we're so frightened that we might not be able to have food on the plate or whatever, that we just don't make the move very often. And then life becomes more and more difficult. The inner self becomes more and more disheartened. And well, we know the story of that. And suddenly we find that our bodies no longer function as well, and dis-ease occurs. So I always think that when our bodies are not functioning well, it's because we're out of alignment with this evolutionary process that we have signed up for. Because once you get a wake-up call, and it can be a trauma, it can be a loss of a loved one, it can be a broken relationship, it can be a disease, a life-threatening disease, it can be a near-death experience. It can be so many different things. It can be it can be a spiritual experience. It can be many different things, but whatever it is, a wake-up call is a moment in your life that everything stops. And you go, this is not the way. Whatever I've been doing and I'm believing and I'm involved in and engaged with is not the way for me to feel good. This is not the purpose of my life. And when you get to that moment, that's when the door opens and says, this way. Now that doesn't mean that all of a sudden overnight it's going to be ease and grace and it's going to be, roses and beautiful music. No, because once you have the wake-up call, then you have to disentangle yourself from all of the old belief systems, all the conditioning of the materialistic, physical conditioning that you have been living by up until then. And then you have to find a way where you can live in this world knowing you're not of this world. Now that statement I make quite often, and it's very powerful because when you think about it then, you can observe the world and without getting engaged in all the drama of the world. And you just become the observer. And that is really what this whole spirituality and this spiritual journey, as we call it, is all about. It is disengaging yourself from the dramas of the physical existence and to become aligned with the observer, the life force that is the observer of all that is going on. When you are thinking something, who is doing the thinking? When you talk about I, who is the I you're talking about? When you are touching something and you feel it, who's doing the feeling? Is it your fingers? Or is it the message that the fingers are sending to the brain, and it is then experienced by what? Oh, once you go on this journey, the questions never stop and the answers are always elusive. Because you think you've got one answer and then that just takes you to the next phase of understanding, and of course another door opens. I've often said that in the old life, when I was living by the rules of the old paradigm of drama and survival, I always had such belief in what I believed in. That was the way it was. And today I have, what I believe this moment, if the next moment something else comes into my awareness, I can drop it straight away and go, oh, so that belief's already obsolete. And we are going at such a speed at the moment that the things that you believed yesterday, that you lived your life by yesterday, today are already obsolete. And you see that in our technology. Einstein once said that, humanity's spirituality has to catch up with its technology, otherwise we are, doomed. And I think this is where we're at the moment. There are so many people that are so frightened of technology because it's going at such amazing speed. But let me tell you, human evolution is going at amazing speed. And those who are not able to get onto this path of conscious awareness and not able to wake up, if they signed up to wake up, then some drama or some trauma has to bring them to a standstill to reevaluate and to say there must be a better way, and then to find the way. And when you find the way, then all sorts of wonderful things come forward towards you. You'll find your teachers, you'll find the right things to read, you'll find the right things to listen to. When I first started, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have, I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have a computer at the time because they were very, very new. Yes, I know, I'm ancient. And so, there were books. I have read thousands of books. And there were the occasional people that would come from another country usually, that would run a weekend workshop, and then they disappeared, and they cost thousands of dollars. The first workshop that I was ever guided to do, it was actually quite a funny story, because obviously I was meant to wake up, but I wasn't really listening because I was in the middle of a drama in my own personal life. I was incredibly unhappy. I certainly was looking to find a way out of the pain, and I came across an advertisement that said that there was a workshop or a weekend or a 3-day, I've forgotten now, something to do with mind over matter. Now, my father had always taught me mind over matter, so I'd heard that a lot. But for him, it was always controlling, it was a thing that you needed to use for control. And so that's in a way the way that I viewed it. So I read something about the De Silva method, and Jose De Silva, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. That's to do with the mind and how to use the mind. But it was quite expensive, and it was in the city, and I live about 45 kilometers from the city, and I had my young children, and I had so many excuses not to do it. So I let it go, and about a week later there was a leaflet in my letterbox. And this is what I mean by, if you've signed up for it, you can't avoid it. It'll chase you until it gets you. So this leaflet said that there would be a 3-day workshop of the De Silva method in the local hall. I could walk to it from my house. So that message kind of said, I think you need to go. I could walk there in the morning, I could walk home in the evening, and my family knew where I was, just down the street. So that was my first introduction to going on this spiritual path, besides somebody introduced me to You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. So they were the two main starting points for me. So as I went on that journey then, I suddenly, because Louise Hay really appealed to me and she had all these affirmations, I actually found myself suddenly writing affirmations. I found myself writing prose and I'd never written in my life. And it just fascinated me. Things were coming out of me that I had no idea where they were coming from. Anyway, I won't sort of take you through my whole journey, but what I wanted to say is that we all have a moment of waking up. And that was the start of my journey. A journey that continues to amaze me, to offer me things that I could never have gained if I'd stayed in the physical paradigm that was still in this state of survival, ego-based, self-identity. I had to let go of all of those things. So spirituality, if you're on this path, you're obviously on this path if you're watching this, stay with it, because today you've got this YouTube, you have Facebook, you have a mobile phone. We are connected worldwide. We can listen to any teacher for free. Oh, and just about the for free bit. If you have the understanding that you're seeking things for free, and there's a lot of it available, and I do this for the purpose of reaching as many people to wake up as possible. But there's always an equal exchange of energy necessary. So honor the teachers that you find, and if you're always looking for things to be free, remember that you are then saying about yourself that you can't afford to give an equal exchange of energy, whether that be money, whether it be passing on the information. There has to be a flow. So just keep remembering that. I want you to gain the understanding of this path and how amazing it is when you stay with it, and what it offers you on the way. So, of course, I looked for a card. I use oracle cards for myself every day, and that is just my way of asking this field of consciousness to give me a message for the day, so that I am always connected. I live in the present. And of course, that is number one. When you go on this path, you've got to learn to be aware, and be aware of the present. This is only part one. It's an introductory bit, and I will continue to go on to this subject next week, and however many weeks that I'm guided to do it. So, of course, I did go to one of my favorite oracle card decks, Energy by Sandra Ann Taylor, and I really love these. They are very aligned with me at the present time. The card that I picked was the Goddess of the Moon, to be in alignment with what we're talking about today. And I just will read to you. The Goddess of the Moon, intuition, going within, because the spiritual journey is all about going within, rather than constantly being attached and engaged with what's without. This card shows an eternal spirit holding the bright reflective moon and standing in front of crystal clear waters of sparkling waterfall. Her arms are stretched upward, receiving the light of the moon, the light of inspiration. This card is all about intuition, the ability to receive insights from your soul's point of view. Receiving the card upright tells you that you have the power to get intuitive information on all types of issues, and now is the time to use it. We spend all our time looking outside in the old paradigm. Now, when we want answers to something, we go inside. The Goddess of the Moon brings you all sorts of information, from the mundane to the spectacular. You're always blessed with this ability to connect, but this card is telling you that now is the perfect time to open up. Get ready for the amazing inspiration this brings. I wouldn't be doing this today if it wasn't important to you. You wouldn't be listening to me if your soul wasn't ready to climb up the spiritual path. The affirmation that she wrote here to go with it: I have a strong intuitive voice. The intuitive voice is the voice of the life force that comes directly from this field of consciousness that creates all of existence. I freely receive guidance, and I understand and trust the message I receive. Trust is absolutely essential. In the beginning, you will question and question and question. Eventually, when you learn to give that up and trust, that's when you'll be free. That's when you will be on this path and flowing with the energy that is the life force of all things. So that is the beginning. This is part one of spirituality. What is it? And why are we seeking it so much? I do hope you've enjoyed this particular discourse. And if you want to work with me more, then you know where to find all the links in the description box. And if you're local, or if you're not local, I do all sorts of wonderful private sessions with you, either by Skype or in person. But all of my programs are directed to taking you higher and higher on this journey of conscious awareness, so that we will all move towards the next expression of this amazing human species. Have a wonderful week. Love yourself more. Love what you are, who you are, and where you're going. See you next week. Bye.